There are moments in life when something strange happens. You stumble upon a message, a sign, a video like this one, and it doesn't feel like a random discovery, but as if fate is whispering your name. You didn't go looking for it. It found you. And this is no coincidence. Carl Jung called this phenomenon meaningful coincidence, where inner psychological transformation is mirrored by external events. Jung devoted his entire life to mapping this invisible structure of transformation. He recognized that the soul has its own rhythm, a sacred timeline that follows no schedule or societal expectations. Some enter this phase at 30, others at 50. That moment arrives only when the unconscious has built up enough pressure that the false mask can no longer hold it back. If you're hearing these words, it means that deep within you, a quiet movement has begun to break the surface, and the universe is responding to you. This video isn't for all women. It's only for those standing on the threshold of the greatest power in their lives, the beginning of a metamorphosis, where the old shell cracks open and the true self begins to rise. In today's video, I will reveal why you were led here, why the universe is calling your name at this exact moment, and why your true power always begins with letting go of everything you thought you were. Are you ready to step across that threshold? Number 1. The threshold of transformation, when the old collapses so the new can emerge. There is a moment in life that no one can avoid, the moment you realize you can no longer fully live in the old self. The things that once brought you happiness now leave only emptiness. The roles that once gave you pride now feel tight, suffocating, like a garment that no longer fits. This is the threshold of transformation, the place where the old begins to collapse so the new can rise. Jung called this the liminal phase, a psychological space between two worlds, no longer belonging to what has passed, but not yet fully entering what is to come. At this threshold, people often experience nameless disturbances. You feel disoriented as you try to repeat old roles. The devoted mother, the compliant wife, the model employee, the dutiful daughter. Each action feels like a familiar dance, but your body no longer wants to move. You find yourself exhausted, not just physically, but on a deep spiritual level. This is no ordinary fatigue. It is the sign of an inner fracture. Like a building that has withstood many years of strain, silent cracks begin to spread, signaling that the old structure can no longer stand. Jung once said that people never truly mature through success or comfort. On the contrary, maturity often begins when one touches a crisis, and women enter their most powerful phase not when they achieve what society expects, but when all those norms begin to collapse. In fact, many women share that they felt no longer themselves, even when their outer lives seemed stable, a harmonious family, a solid career, well-behaved children. But inside, a strange thirst rises to live authentically, to escape the mask they have worn for too long. This feeling can be likened to steel entering the forge, red-hot, formless, then emerging as a stronger, more beautiful shape. The threshold of transformation is that very moment. The old dissolves to make way for the new. Yet this process often comes with pain, because people rarely let go easily. Many women recount feeling chest tightness, insomnia, mild depression, or unexplained burnout. Doctors may find nothing abnormal, but the soul knows full well. You are no longer living true to yourself. This is how the unconscious sends signals that it is time to change. Like the drumbeat rising from deep in the earth, heralding the coming rain, the unconscious also taps its rhythm to announce that the old structure cannot endure forever. The hardest part of this threshold is not the collapse itself, but the sense of being lost between two worlds. You no longer want to cling to the old, but the new remains hazy. Many describe this state as free-falling. Behind lies the familiar abyss, ahead an unshaped void. It is here that the greatest fear rises. Fear of losing control, fear of losing oneself, fear that you are going mad. This is the law. The old must dissolve for the new to have space. In Jungian language, it is the symbolic death, the necessary ending that allows beginning to occur. Just as a seed must rot in the soil before it can sprout, the old ego must fade so the authentic self can live. You may see this in small but bold decisions. One woman suddenly feels she cannot continue a job she's held for 15 years, despite its stable income. Another no longer feels she belongs in once close friendships. Some even realize their marriage has become a mere form. All these shifts are not selfishness, but signals from the unconscious realigning your life. And this is precisely the starting point of power. Not when you hold on to everything, but when you dare to release. For only in the breaking open does a new space emerge, a space where your true self can breathe, speak, live. The threshold of transformation is where you are forced to confront the question, if not for all those roles, who am I? It is merely the overture to a deeper process, the rising of the true being. And Jung called that center the self, the whole I, the core soul connecting conscious and unconscious, holding the primal truth of you. Number 2, the rising of the true self, the call from the self. In everyday life, we are accustomed to viewing ourselves through society's lens, career, roles, relationships. All those definitions are mere fragments of the true person. They are the shell of the social ego, not the self. When the shell cracks, the self begins to speak, and that call rarely rings out in words, but in inexpressible feelings, a vague urge, a longing to live authentically, a sense that you can no longer pretend. Jung once wrote, "One cannot individuate as long as one is playing a role to oneself," implying that the process of individuation only begins when we stop living the false performance. In this phase, you will start to feel as if an invisible force within is guiding you. It does not impose, does not command, but makes you clearly recognize when something feels wrong or right for your being. One of the clearest signs of the self's rising is that your body knows before your mind does. You feel suffocated when you must force a smile in small talk. You feel heavy when you must please someone, while inside you want to say no. Your heart races, your stomach knots, your throat tightens. These biological signals are the language of the self, telling you the mask no longer fits. Here, pause for a moment and ask yourself, when was the last time you felt your body speak, but your rational mind tried to deny it? Try closing your eyes for 1 minute, recall that sensation, and write down 3 words to describe it. That is how the self is communicating with you. What is fascinating is that many mistake this rising for a midlife crisis. But in truth, it is not a decline, but an opening. It is when the self decides to step into the light. Like a seed in the soil, it has accumulated enough energy, enough nourishment, enough pressure to break the shell and reach toward the sun. If you feel everything familiar has become meaningless, that is not a breakdown, but a signal that you are ready to grow. Jung clearly distinguished between the ego and the self. The ego is like a small boat bobbing on the ocean. It imagines itself as everything, but it is truly just a tiny part of the vast sea. The self is that entire ocean. When the self rises, you begin to realize that the boat cannot define the ocean. You are not just your job, not just your relationships, not just your social roles. You are the whole of life flowing through you. On a practical level, this rise often leads women to shifts in their choices. Instead of trying to please, they begin to ask, does this truly reflect who I am? Instead of chasing approval, they listen to the inner voice. Some decide to write the book they've dreamed of for a lifetime. Others refuse toxic relationships, and still others choose to slow down to nurture art, spirituality, or simply stillness. This is not a selfish action, but loyalty to the self. The clearest difference is the sense of wholeness. When the self leads, you no longer feel fragmented. You do not have to play disjointed roles. You can be both mother and artist, both woman and passionate explorer, without contradiction. For the self embraces all. It requires no exclusionary choices. However, this rise also carries a challenge. The ego will resist, for it fears losing control. It wants to keep you in the safe zone, in familiar roles. But the self is more patient, more enduring. It will keep calling, keep sending signals, until you can no longer ignore it. And once you begin to listen, you will discover something miraculous. Everything in life starts to rearrange itself to support this change. New opportunities, new people, unexpected turns appear. Thus, the call from the self is not a call to become a different version of yourself. It brings you closer to the being that has always been there, merely covered by the dust of expectations and fears. It is not a journey to become someone new, but a journey to return to yourself. And when the self rises, you begin to see clearly. The truth does not lie out there, but within you, waiting for you to dare to look straight at it and live true. Number 3, solitude, the phase of withdrawal and introspection. However, for the call from the self to become reality, you cannot continue running endlessly in the old rhythm of life. When the inner truth begins to speak, the soul will carve out for itself a space of silence to nurture the change. And that is when the journey leads you into the next phase, solitude, the phase of withdrawal and introspection. Jung called this the stage where the psyche automatically withdraws energy from the outer world to devote it to the inner process of transformation. For many, it feels like a retreat, but in truth, it is the deepest advance. In practice, many women describe this sensation as a silent boycott of daily activities. They no longer find interest in parties, no longer have patience for meaningless chatter, and even within the family, they sense an invisible distance. This can easily lead others to misunderstand that they are falling into depression or having issues. But Jung explained it differently. This is the natural mechanism of the psyche when it needs to reclaim energy to foster rebirth. Just as in winter, when trees draw their life sap down to the roots to prepare for spring, the soul also requires this period of retreat into darkness to restore itself. Jung once emphasized, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." That saying precisely captures what is happening in the phase of solitude. When you begin to turn inward, you awaken from the collective dreams, the beliefs, roles, and expectations that society has imposed on you. You start to realize that what you once thought was reality was merely a shared script that everyone is performing. The special thing is that this withdrawal is not a rejection of life, but a quiet preparation. In analytical psychology, this is the incubation phase. Just as an embryo needs the darkness of the womb to form, your transformation also requires this stillness to ripen. If you resist it, if you force yourself to integrate as before, you will feel increasingly depleted. But if you embrace the solitude, you will sense a subtle movement. The loss of familiar bonds, but it is precisely here that a new form of power forms, the ability to stand alone without feeling empty. When you no longer depend on others' gazes to affirm your existence, you begin to become utterly free. This is the foundation, so that later you can step into the world with wholeness, rather than continuing to perform to fit in. So, do not rush to see this phase of withdrawal as being stuck. View it as retreating into the cave to nurture the inner flame. Jung once wrote, "Solitude is for me a fount of healing which makes my life worth living." It is the time you allow yourself to listen, to heal, and to prepare for the emergence of a more whole person. Number 4. The rising of archetypal energy, from maiden to queen. After the months of solitude, when you have stepped away from the outer clamor and endured the inner emptiness, another movement begins to unfold. It is not loud, not ostentatious, but powerful, like a subterranean lava flow. Archetypal energy rises. Jung once emphasized that behind every phase of life are archetypes at work. They are not merely symbolic images in myths, but innate psychological structures that guide us through the stages of existence. In women, the most significant shift is the journey from maiden to queen. This is not a romantic label, but a profound psychological turning point. The maiden represents the phase where the woman still seeks her definition through outer gazes. She longs for praise, to be chosen, to be loved. In the maiden's energy, power still lies in the hands of others, those who can grant her recognition. In contrast, the queen is the symbol of inner wholeness. She needs no permission, no one to hand her the crown, for the experiences of darkness, solitude, and confronting the self have qualified her to crown herself. This transition often occurs quietly but intensely. You may find yourself no longer swept away by superficial compliments, rushing to prove your worth. A woman once obsessed with what others thought of her appearance now suddenly sees true allure coming from a confident gaze and poised stride, rather than rigid standards. Or someone once entangled in controlling, fragile romances now finds attraction not in being chosen, but in her own capacity to choose. We can see this image in how singer Taylor Swift chose to re-record her old albums, Taylor's version, to reclaim creative sovereignty. That is not just a career strategy. Symbolically, it is an act of self-coronation, shifting from waiting to be chosen to the power of choosing. The Queen's energy here is not flashy, but steadfast. Sovereignty, boundaries, and autonomy are placed in their rightful positions, forcing the surrounding reality to rearrange to the rhythm of her inner world. If you have ever sensed the moment you stepped out of the maiden's mindset to touch the Queen's steadfastness, write that story here, not just to tell, but so that other women struggling can see their reflection in your experience. Jung described archetypes as primordial images that humanity carries from the collective unconscious. If the maiden symbolizes the beginning, the untapped potential, then the Queen is the crystallization of experience, power forged through darkness. This also explains why many women enter their most powerful phase not in youth, but after passing through enough wounds, losses, and trials. Notably, not everyone completes this path fully. Some women at 50 or 60 remain stuck in the maiden mindset. That is not because they are weak, but because they have never allowed the collapse to happen. They built walls too solid, wore masks too long, so the self had no chance to emerge. Conversely, some women from a very young age are forced into this journey by events, losses, or simply because the unconscious has accumulated enough energy to rise. In the Queen's phase, you will notice something fascinating. Your steadfastness becomes as natural as breath. You no longer have to strive to prove or defend your views. You simply are present, and that presence is enough for others to feel it. This is the power that inspires both admiration and caution in many, because it does not come from noise, but from wholeness. In the space you enter, others cannot pretend, for the truth in you acts like a mirror, forcing them to look back. In the broader Jungian picture, the rising from maiden to queen also holds collective meaning. When a woman touches the Queen's energy, she not only liberates herself, but opens a path for the collective feminine, unconscious, to heal. For in each woman's self lies the voice of mothers, grandmothers, female ancestors who lived in silence. When you step into the Queen, you stand in for them, living the life they were not permitted. This explains why the Queen's power often comes with a sense of the sacred. You are not living just for yourself, but for the flow of femininity through history. Thereseg, from maiden to queen, also means you are no longer controlled by the fear of loss. That is not indifference, but trust in the rhythm of the self and the universe. And precisely when you are no longer dominated by fear, the long-suppressed energy begins to flow freely. From the Queen's solid center, a primal life force is awakened, Eros, the creative energy that has nourished the universe since the beginning. Number 5. The awakening of creative energy, Eros. This is precisely what Jung saw when he connected Western psychology with Eastern philosophy and mysticism, where Eros is not merely sexual, but the principle of life, the creative force operating the universe. It is essential to emphasize that, in modern culture, the word eros is often reduced to sexual attraction or behavior. But for Jung, eros is far broader. It is the power of connection, nourishment, creation, a sacred energy that is both corporeal and spiritual. When a woman enters the most powerful phase of her life, Eros is no longer suppressed within the framework of attraction or gender roles, but liberated as a primal creative force. In practice, this can manifest in many different ways. A woman may suddenly find herself craving creation, writing, painting, gardening, dancing, activities she once considered luxurious. Another may experience a shift in her sexual energy, no longer bound to attraction towards someone, but becoming a vibrant sensation flooding the whole body. This is when Eros transforms from seeking an object to power of existence. Jung once observed that in many ancient esoteric traditions, Eros is understood as the flow connecting humanity to the universe. The Indians call it Shakti, the feminine creative energy, the source of all manifestation. In Western alchemy, it is the sacred fire that melts crude metal to produce gold. In Jung's psychology, it is the inner flame that, when released, propels the individual into a state of comprehensive creativity. What is fascinating is that the awakening of Eros often comes with a change in how one experiences the body. Women entering this phase begin to feel their body not merely as a tool for labor or an object for others to judge, but as a sacred temple housing the flow of creation. Some feel vitality surging through breath, movement, even in moments of stillness. This is the sign that body and soul are beginning to reintegrate after years of separation. However, this awakening also poses a challenge. Society often fears Eros. A woman living fully in her Eros is easily labeled too much, uncontrollable, dangerous. That reflects the truth that the world prefers domestication, while Eros is the fire of freedom. And Jung would say, it is precisely that repressed, feared part that carries the key to wholeness. From a psychological perspective, Eros not only nourishes artistic creation or personal experience, but also reorganizes the entire psychic energy. Instead of being scattered to please others, that energy converges and flows as a powerful current, propelling you toward your true life purpose. This is why many women entering this phase suddenly find a clear mission, even though they once floundered. When Eros is awakened, it guides like an underground stream, leading you where you need to go, even if your mind has not yet envisioned it. Eros is like electricity in a house. In the maiden phase, most of the power is divided, directed to external lamps, recognition, roles, and attraction. When stepping into the Queen, the wiring system is restructured. Energy no longer leaks outward, but illuminates the central inner lamp. This light needs no one to behold it, but it radiates naturally, transforming the entire space. The key point Jung emphasized: Eros, when liberated, connects rather than divides. It makes you feel more deeply with yourself, with others, with nature, and with all of life. You no longer see the world as a place to conquer or control, but as a flow to merge with and create alongside. This is the shift from a do to have psychology to exist to create. Many women have experienced this moment when they dared to step out of the musts. A manager, once tied to achievements, suddenly leaves her job to write a novel. A busy mother suddenly takes time to learn contemporary dance and feels like reclaiming her youth. Those choices are not just hobbies, they are how Eros reclaims space, allowing primal creation to live in its true nature. Eros also brings a paradox. It makes you less dependent on romantic love, but more profound in love, because you no longer need others to affirm your existence. You approach love not from lack, but from wholeness. And from that wholeness, you can love freely, powerfully, without losing yourself. Number 6. The ultimate challenge, temptation from the old life. The awakening of Eros opens up for you an abundance of life force never before experienced. You feel filled with power, creativity, and freedom begins to flow in your veins. But it is precisely then that a new challenge emerges, the most dangerous challenge in the entire individuation journey, the call from the old life. And it often sounds not with ferocity, but with sweet whispers. Jung once said that the shadow exists not only in the frightening things, but also in comfort, familiarity. When you begin to change, the old part of you, the ego that existed for many years, will not easily disappear. It will try to pull you back with everything that once made you secure. Others' recognition, comfortable habits, familiar roles. The old knows your weaknesses well, for it is you. In everyday terms, this challenge can appear in very ordinary situations. A woman, after bravely leaving a constraining job to pursue art, suddenly receives an offer for a stable, high-paying position. Everyone around advises her to be realistic and return to the old path. Or someone who has just stepped out of a toxic relationship suddenly feels her heart soften when the ex returns, promising change. In such moments, the newly risen Eros can easily be extinguished, and you may lose yourself once more. This ultimate challenge is very much like the ancient myths Jung often cited. The hero, after overcoming hardships to reach the treasure, faces the final test not as a dragon, but as the temptation to return to ordinary life. In psychology, this is the resistance of the ego, the self accustomed to old patterns. The ego fears losing control, fears confronting the uncertainty of the new, so it creates an illusion. Going back will be easier. Returning is safer. You can imagine it as climbing a mountain. When you've gone more than halfway, you look back and see the old path, though difficult, less risky than the abyss ahead. Meanwhile, the summit is shrouded in clouds. The temptation lies in returning means you know what you'll have, while going on means you have no certainty of may lead you to difficult choices, but comes with a sense of rightness, a deep peace, even amid outer chaos. The test here is, do you have enough courage to trust that intuition, or will you return to familiar territory for safety? Thank you for journeying with me to this point. If you are still here, it means a part of you has truly listened to the call from the self. Our journey is drawing toward its close, but what lies ahead will be deeper, brighter, and more challenging. Leave a sign of commitment to this path for yourself by pressing like and subscribe so that you yourself remember. I have chosen to step forward. I have chosen loyalty to my true being. Number 7. Collective impact. Healing the feminine flow. Overcoming the ultimate challenge. When you have dared to be loyal to your true being and refuse the temptation to return to the old life, a miracle begins to unfold. The power you have just unlocked does not belong to you alone. It touches a larger flow, the feminine flow connecting past, present, and future. Jung called this the collective unconscious, where not only personal memories and symbols are stored, but also the treasure trove of humanity's entire experience. When a woman awakens, she not only changes herself, but also stirs the deep layers of the collective unconscious, where the memories of all women who have lived before are held. On a contemporary level, we have witnessed this through the hashtag #MeToo wave. When the first women dared to tell their stories, they did not merely reclaim their individual voices, but opened a channel for millions of other voices waiting to be raised. That chain reaction was not merely media, it was a collective crack in the sediment of silence across generations, where fear dissolved and made way for new consciousness. This explains why your journey often comes with an ineffable sense of the sacred. You may not understand why you cry upon hearing the story of an old woman in a distant land, or why you feel pain at the injustices faced by women in another era. That is because in the collective unconscious, all those memories, pains, and longings have been imprinted. And when you awaken, you connect with them, as if the voices of ancestors echo in your very blood and flesh. For example, a woman decides to break a family pattern of oppression, choosing independence over tradition. That decision not only liberates her, but also holds symbolic power. It frees the generations of women in her family who had to live in silence. Jung called this intergenerational healing, where a conscious act in the present can resolve untouched wounds of the past. We often think our wounds are personal, related only to childhood, relationships, or individual choices. But Jung argued that the collective unconscious operates deeper. Many pains you carry are imprints of unlived lives, of women before you forced to bury their voices. When you dare to live authentically, you heal not only yourself, but also them. And at the same time, you create a new path for the women after you. You are rewriting the invisible history of femininity in the collective unconscious. This is also why the rise of women always comes with an inexplicable power that sometimes instills fear in those around. Because you do not represent only yourself, but an entire flow suppressed for thousands of years. When you say no to oppression, you speak for countless women who never had the chance. When you dare to choose truth, you repay the debt to souls forced into silence. That collective impact also shows you why the journey of individuation is never just personal business. It is always tied to a greater responsibility. You become a torchbearer, whether you want it or not. Simply by your honest presence, you unwittingly illuminate those still struggling. And that torch, Jung would say, does not belong to you personally, but to the feminine flow that has passed through you to continue onward. You may never know all those touched by your journey. A courageous decision of yours may become a story retold, inspiring someone far away or in a future generation. You do not need to know it all, for that flow operates on its own. Your role is simply to live authentically, so the feminine energy is no longer imprisoned in silence, but flows freely. To this point, do you dare to become a link in that flow, not living just for yourself, but for all the women who were never permitted to live? When an old chapter closes, it is not to become someone else, but to leave no reason to delay living as yourself. You need no more promises. You need a silent commitment to your inner self. From now on, every choice will stand on the side of truth. The stillness you touch is not emptiness, but the deep foundation where your inner compass orients more clearly than any outer noise. There, courage is not loud. It is calm, persistent, and knows when to step forward. From this moment, let your inner rhythm guide your outer life. Say what needs to be said. Release what needs to be released. Hold what needs to be held. Each step aligns. Some people walk into your life carrying an emptiness. They have nothing to give, and they don't even try to hide it. They don't love you the way you need. They don't choose you. They don't truly see you. Yet you stay, drawn in, pulled tight, as if some invisible thread binds you to them, no matter how loudly your mind has screamed, "Don't." That kind of love is not love. It is a wound doing the loving for you. A silent but powerful part of your unconscious chose that person not because they were right, but because they awakened an old pain you've never truly faced. This is not emotional foolishness. It is a deep psychological mechanism repeating itself with the precision of a wound's logic. And if you don't recognize it, you will think you're in love, when in truth, you're just trying to heal the past through a present relationship that cannot save you. Number 1. The unconscious root, the wound of not enough. There is a kind of pain that never screams, yet echoes through every relationship you've ever had. It's the feeling of, I'm not good enough, not pretty enough, not smart enough, not gentle enough, not lovable enough to be chosen, to be kept, to be fully loved. This feeling doesn't appear out of nowhere. It doesn't come from any one person in your present. It's the result of fragments from childhood memories, where love was conditional, where you learned that affection wasn't natural, but a reward for being the good, smart, or pleasing child. Slowly and unconsciously, you came to believe that to be loved, you must be deserving. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents." When parents are unable to express love in a healthy way, when they deny themselves full emotional expression, the child ends up carrying their expectations, their emptiness, and their unresolved pieces. A child raised in an environment lacking emotional connection easily develops an ego full of shame and inadequacy. And when that child becomes an adult, they enter relationships with a hunger to love and be loved, but from a flawed starting point. What must I do to be chosen? From this place, love is no longer a meeting of two free souls. It becomes a stage where you play the role of the worthy one. You don't love like a person, you love like a job applicant, trying to impress, to prove, to please, waiting to be accepted. This leads to a painful paradox. You are drawn to people who cannot or will not give you anything. Why? Because they reactivate your deepest wound, the feeling of not being enough. They become the unconscious symbol of everything you once lacked. Loving them is your psyche's attempt to rewrite the ending of an old story. If they, cold and distant as they are, finally choose you, then maybe you are enough. Maybe you've been validated. Jung wrote, "What you resist persists. What you reject within yourself will continue to live on, even stronger." The feeling of not being enough is a form of inner shadow, and if it isn't brought to the light of consciousness, it will continue to dictate every bond you make. You can change partners, cities, behaviors, but the outcome repeats. You fall for those who cannot see you, not because you're unworthy, but because you're still trying to fix something from your past with your present. Picture a young woman. She grows up in a family where love is conditional. Every compliment is tied to achievement, and every hug comes after a high score. When she makes mistakes, silence, not warmth, is her parents' response. She learns that she is only lovable when she's good enough. As an adult, Anne is constantly drawn to emotionally distant men, those she must try twice as hard to impress, to hold on to. She believes that if they finally love her, it proves she is good, she is worthy. But this is the trap. Because she loves from a wound, she is not loving freely, but as someone in debt. In a powerful excerpt from Ion, Jung writes, "The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. To become conscious of it involves recognizing the dark aspects of the personality as present and real. Recognizing the feeling of not enough is neither easy nor comfortable. It requires you to face the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, the insecure, hurt, empty parts you don't want to admit exist. But only when you confront that shadow can you stop being controlled by it." Another critical point is this. When you love from a place of lack, you don't just hurt yourself, you also risk hurting the other person. You expect them to fill you, fix you, make you feel whole. But that's not their role. No one can complete what you haven't completed in yourself. And when they fail to meet that need, you feel disappointed, rejected, as if your entire worth has been denied. The old wound reopens. The cycle repeats. True love doesn't grow out of emptiness. It grows from inner wholeness. But to reach that Not because they are extraordinary, not because you're foolish, but because your unconscious recognizes something. I know this energy. I've been here before. In Carl Jung's analytical psychology, this is not random. Jung called it projection. Your unconscious is casting unresolved inner images onto the outer world. When a wound within you remains unseen, it will recreate itself through the people you meet. Jung wrote, "The unconscious always seeks expression, and if it is not made conscious, it will project itself into relationships and events." This is how the psyche operates. What has not been resolved does not disappear. It returns in the form of a person, a situation, a feeling so familiar that it convinces you it must be fate. So again, you fall for someone who has nothing to offer, not because they're whole, but because they resemble someone you once needed and never had. A symbol, a symbolic reenactment, as Jung described. You don't fall in love to connect. You fall in love to complete an old story that never had an ending. A story that may have started when you were very young, standing outside a closed door, waiting for a word of recognition, a hug, a glance that said, "You matter." But it never came. And you carried on with an emptiness, not sharply painful, but always present. Jung said the unconscious is a self-regulating system, and repetition is one way the unconscious seeks to restore what was incomplete. In other words, you repeat to complete. You love someone who can't love you, so that if this time they choose you, it will redeem the time you were not chosen. The real question isn't, why do I love them? The real question is, how am I trying to fix the past? You didn't choose this person because you lack standards. You chose them because your emotional blueprint was shaped by pain, and your unconscious is trying to finish what was left undone. Jung called this a delayed individuation process. When the ego hasn't yet integrated the shadow, it seeks an external object to replay what remains unresolved within. The result? You don't love the person in front of you. You love the part of yourself that hasn't healed. If you see yourself here, pause for a moment and ask honestly, what keeps me from leaving? Often, it's not love. It's a hope. A hope that if they change this time, it will prove you are good enough. This is the common illusion of those carrying childhood wounds. They are not looking for love. They are looking for evidence of their worth. And tragically, no evidence is ever enough. Even if the person temporarily changes, you'll still live in fear. Will they go back to who they were? Is this love even real? Because it never came from the present. It came from a fracture in the past that was never mended. Jung wrote, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. Every person you love, every relationship you live through, is another mask your unconscious wears to say, 'Look at me, heal me.' But instead of listening, you keep fighting, keep proving, keep clinging to those who cannot give you what you need, because you believe that if they turn around, if they choose you, then you'll be free. But the truth is, no one can free you from the story you refuse to leave. I once heard a woman say, "I know he doesn't love me, but I can't stop loving him." I asked, "Do you love him, or do you love the possibility that if he loved you, you'd finally feel enough?" She broke down. That was the truth. And the truth always hurts. But as Jung said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. There is no awakening that doesn't come with suffering. Realizing you've spent a lifetime waiting to be chosen is the first step toward individuation. It's not weakness, it's soul-level courage. Jung believed this pattern could only be broken when brought into the light of consciousness. That means you must dare to name the real feelings, the lack, the inadequacy, the craving to be loved unconditionally. You must stop and ask, who was the first person who made me feel I had to earn love? The answer doesn't lie in your current partner. It lies in older memories, where you are not truly seen. And only when you return to those places with compassion can you rewrite the script. Not by making someone else love you, but by loving the part of you that was once abandoned. You don't need to keep striving to be loved. You need to heal so that you can love without striving. When that happens, you no longer get pulled toward the cold and distant, because you no longer need them to prove your worth. You'll realize, I don't love this person, I love the idea of who I wish they could be. And that distinction is a major turning point. Carl Jung emphasized that the unconscious is not the enemy. It's a guide if you're willing to listen. The fact that you keep repeating old patterns doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're being invited to heal something deeper. If you refuse that invitation, the pattern will continue. If you accept it, transformation begins. And in the end, this is not theory, it's an action. Confused or as though I'm describing your story, don't dismiss that feeling. Let me ask you this. The love you claim, does it hold you in a state of anxiety, insecurity, and constant self-proving? If it does, maybe you're not in love at all. Maybe you're trying to fill a void you've never fully acknowledged. Jung believed that intimate relationships are a living stage where the unconscious performs the unfinished parts of our soul. In Ion, he wrote, "The psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. What you haven't made conscious within you will show up outside as if it were destiny. That's why chaotic, tension-filled relationships aren't just emotional failures. They're vivid manifestations of inner wounds left unaddressed. I once worked with a young woman. She loved a successful, charismatic man, but he was also erratic and emotionally unavailable. Sometimes he was affectionate, then he'd vanish without a word. And she waited. For hours, for days, for months. Every time he returned with a little affection, she hoped, maybe he truly loves me. He's just busy, hurt, learning how to love. But in truth, she wasn't in love with him. She was trying to heal the pain of being neglected by her father as a child. She was reenacting a script she knew well, being left behind, then waiting to be chosen. If you see yourself in that story, you are not alone. Many of us have confused love with intensity. We believe that love must include suffering, waiting, sacrificing, and relentless effort, because our bodies and emotions are accustomed to loving under emotional starvation. But real love doesn't demand your pain. It doesn't make you doubt yourself. It doesn't turn you into the weakest version of who you are. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung wrote, "As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. The deeper purpose of existence is not to suffer endlessly, but to awaken light within the darkness of the unconscious. And that light cannot grow in relationships that only bring anguish, control, disrespect, and insecurity." Look back for a moment. How many times have you stayed in a relationship simply because you believed love means endurance? How many times have you sacrificed your own emotions, your time, your dignity, to save someone who wasn't ready to be saved? How many times have you mistaken emotional distance for emotional depth? How many times have you turned clear signs of neglect into stories like, "They just need more time"? That's not compassion. That's a form of self-deception, an attempt to avoid facing the feeling of abandonment, a feeling you've carried long before this relationship even began. Jung warned clearly, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their soul. We're willing to do the most irrational things just to avoid facing ourselves. And one of the most common absurdities is calling pain love, to avoid admitting we're loving the wrong way, the wrong person, and for the wrong reasons. So what does real love look like? It's the kind that brings peace, not the kind that leaves you anxiously awaiting each message. It's the kind that makes you believe in yourself more, not feel like you must constantly try harder just to be kept. It doesn't require you to sacrifice your self-respect. It gives you space to grow, to breathe, to be fully yourself. If this is resonating with you, share your thoughts in the comments. What part of you is being stirred right now? And finally, remember this: you were not born to carry the emotional burdens of others. You are not obligated to heal someone by abandoning yourself. You do not need to suffer to prove you love deeply. That is not love. That is trauma bonding, attachment born from trauma, not freedom. To heal, you must start with the truth. Not everything that feels intense is love. Sometimes it's the cry of an unhealed part of you, returning to the same place where it was first hurt, hoping this time it will end differently. But it never will, unless you choose differently. In the next part, we'll explore what happens when you stop confusing love with pain, when you begin to love from awareness instead of from your wounds. Stay with me, because that might be the moment that changes your entire journey through love. Are you ready to stop loving by habit and start loving as someone who has truly seen themselves? Number 4. The mechanism of self-deception and why you can't walk away. Have you ever stayed in a relationship you knew deep down wasn't meant for you? Not because the love was so strong you couldn't leave, but because you couldn't accept the truth that what you called love was only an illusion. An illusion that if you just tried a little harder, tolerated a little more, loved a little deeper, everything would eventually change. An illusion that one day, this person would awaken, recognize your love, and return with some grand gesture that would make all the pain worth it. But the truth is, what keeps you stuck is not the person. It's the story you've told you. Close one moment, distant the next. She never defined the relationship, but never fully let him go either. Every time she returned with just a short message, his hope reignited. He told me, "She's been hurt before. She needs time to believe in love." But the relationship dragged on for nearly 3 years with no progress. I asked him, "Do you love her? Or do you love the idea that one day she'll finally choose you?" And he was silent for a long time. That's when we must ask clearly, are you staying because of love or because you can't face the pain of rejection? You're not staying out of love. You're staying because walking away would mean admitting you weren't chosen. That truth hurts so much that your mind rewrites everything into something easier to accept. They have their reasons. I understand them. They didn't mean to hurt me. They're just under pressure. And you name your tolerance with something noble, compassion. But in reality, it's fear dressed up as kindness. Jung said, neurosis is fundamentally the avoidance of legitimate suffering. Emotional disorders like anxiety, dependency, and post-breakup depression often result from avoiding the necessary pain of growth. And one such pain is facing the truth. Some people don't love you, not because you weren't good enough, but because they had nothing to give. They're not here to test your love. They're here to test your awakening. Many of us think we're being patient, but really, we're postponing real pain with false hope. You think you're being patient with them, but really, you're being patient with your fear. You're afraid you chose wrong, afraid you gave too much to someone undeserving. If you walk away, you'll have to admit you waited in vain, placed your hope in the wrong person. And that cost feels more painful than staying. So you stay. Not out of love, but because you're not ready to shatter the illusion. True love doesn't ask you to become someone's therapist. It doesn't demand that you rationalize, justify, or excuse your pain. It doesn't make you feel like you're asking too much, just for wanting to be loved properly. If you live in constant tension, behavior analysis, endless guessing, and assumptions, you're in a trauma system, not a healthy relationship. If you've read this far, pause and ask yourself, am I in love with them, or with the hope that one day they'll change? So many of us have clung not to a person, but to the dream they represented. A dream of being recognized, of finally being enough for someone to choose. But here's the truth. No one can prove your worth to you, except you. When you're brave enough to face the truth, you begin to see what you're holding on to. You no longer need a pretty story to justify a painful reality. You don't need an excuse to tolerate lack. You tear up the old script and rewrite it with honesty. That's the beginning of what Jung called individuation, the process of no longer living in the unconscious, but living in the light of your own. Individuation doesn't begin when you find new love. It begins when you dare to ask, am I betraying myself in the name of love? Jung once said, only the paradox comes anywhere near to comprehending the fullness of life. Life is full of contradictions, and one of the greatest paradoxes is this. Sometimes to truly love someone, you must dare to walk away. To truly honor yourself, you must release what you once called love. Not because your feelings are gone, but because you choose to be more loyal to your inner truth than to an outer story. That's not bitterness. It's the first step toward the deepest healing of all. Truth. Number 5. Awakening. When pain becomes a mirror. There is a truth that is hard to accept, but it marks the beginning of every healing journey. No one can save you from a pain you're not yet ready to embrace yourself. No lover, no relationship, no external validation can fill the emptiness you created by abandoning your presence in your life. And this emptiness is not just the absence of what you didn't have. It's the void left by the parts of yourself you unconsciously gave up to be accepted, to be loved, to be enough in someone else's eyes. Carl Jung did not use gentle words when speaking of this. He chose a truth that is both sharp and compassionate. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. The undiscovered self. You will not find the truth of who you are in someone else's gaze. Clarity does not come from being chosen, held, or loved by another. It only comes when you dare to look into your own heart, the place where all the truths you've avoided are waiting. Awakening, as Jung defined it, does not arrive when you find someone better, a more healthy relationship, or when your ex returns with a late apology. Awakening happens in the moment you stop looking outward and start turning inward. When you sit alone in silence, with no messages, no affirming glances, no one arriving to fill the familiar void, in front of a mirror, not the kind that reflects your image, but an inner mirror. And in that mirror, what appears is not your face, but the pains you've denied. Each time you cling to someone who doesn't love you is a time you've covered the mirror. Each time you say, "I'm fine," while your heart breaks, is a time you've blurred the glass. But eventually, no one comes to hear your old stories. No circumstance is left to hide in, and you are forced to look. And what you see may hurt, but it is also what will free you. Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Memories, dreams, reflections. You cannot awaken without pain. You cannot become conscious without touching the parts inside that have long been buried in dust." Awakening is not a soft emotion. It arrives like a contraction, when everything you once believed shatters, when you no longer know who you are without that person's love, when you're forced to ask, "If no one is left to love me, do I still have anything?" And then, something strange happens. In the emptiness, you begin to hear the voice of the true self. Not the voice of ego, the one that fears being left behind, but the small, gentle, unshakable voice of the self, the deepest core that Jung spoke of. In Aion, Jung wrote, "The self is not only the center, but also the whole circumference which embraces both consciousness and the unconscious. It is the center of this totality." That means, the self is not just your center, it is the total circle, containing both what you know and what you've denied. It is your wholeness, nothing missing, nothing excluded. When you connect with the self, you stop living as a wounded ego, constantly chasing love for validation. You begin to feel your worth as something inherent, as wholeness. And that changes everything. You no longer choose people because they make you feel enough. You no longer mistake drama for depth. You no longer love to heal, to fix, or to complete someone. You love someone who has realized they were whole all along. From here, you'll see that love is no longer a battleground of sacrifice and endurance. It becomes a sacred space where two whole beings grow together, without shrinking themselves to fit, without expecting someone else to fill a void inside them. If you are at that breaking point now, the moment you've just let someone go, just lost an illusion, just don't know who you are anymore, then know that you are standing at the threshold of freedom. Not the kind of freedom that rushes to find something new, but the deepest kind. The freedom to be yourself without needing to prove it. Jung believed, as far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. Memories, dreams, reflections. The purpose of life is not to avoid the darkness. It is to light it up. And the first spark of that light always begins within you. You may have spent a part of your life living inside the story of, I'm not enough, not beautiful enough, not smart enough, not obedient or gentle enough for someone to choose you, keep you, or stay by your side. You didn't love to connect, you loved to prove your worth. You stayed in places where love didn't exist, not because you didn't know better, but because you feared something even greater than loneliness, facing the emptiness inside yourself. But you are not here to beg for love. You weren't born to chase after someone's gaze just to feel like you matter. You are love itself, not the kind that depends on someone else being there, but the kind that rises when you come home to yourself. When you dare to look at your wounds, face your shadows, and embrace who you truly are, fully, unconditionally. Healing isn't about becoming cold or pretending you're too strong to feel pain. It's about learning never to abandon yourself again, not even in the name of love. You begin to walk away when someone can't see your worth. You set boundaries, not because you're bitter, but because you now understand your presence holds value, and it should never be treated lightly. And here's the quiet miracle. When you stop choosing people who hurt you just to feel something, when you stop mistaking chaos for love, when you no longer shrink yourself to fit into someone else's story, that's when real love has space to find you. A love that doesn't make you anxious. A love that doesn't put you in limbo. A love that sees you, touches you gently, and stays, not because you're perfect, but because you are whole in your truth. If this journey is touching something deep inside you, don't let it stop here. Subscribe to keep walking with us on the path back to your true self, where your wounds are no longer burdens, but doors to the most complete version of who you are meant to become. You don't have to walk this path alone. We are here every week, every video, to remind you of one simple truth. You have always been enough, and you have always deserved a love that begins from within.